Grounded theory has become one of the most commonly used methodologies within an interpretive theoretical perspective. It is, simply put, an approach that works inductively from data, using particular strategies for coding, analyzing, and writing about data in order to build a theory. So, grounded theory is characterized by a number of features. I'll talk about them throughout this presentation. It, though, is characterized by simultaneously collecting and analyzing data, building on data collection in a theoretically sensitive way, using analytic strategies, working from the data rather than from a priori theories. It's oftentimes a term that you will hear used or read about in grounded theory is what's called the constant comparative method, working again back and forth between data and ever increasingly more conceptual and theoretical ideas. And using writing as a strategy in order to help build this theoretical understanding. And that's oftentimes referred to as memo writing. As we think about this iterative process for data collection and analysis, there is this concept of theoretical sampling. That is, that we choose to collect more data that helps us to build the theory, that it's not based on some other notion of why it is that we sample. So the term grounded theory and the methodology was created by Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss. They wrote the book, The Discovery of Grounded Theory, in 1966 as a consequence of doing their study in 1964 on the awareness of dying. So during the conduct of that study, looking at how caregivers and other medical professionals understood dying, dealt with dying when there were varying levels of awareness that patients were dying. They built, modified, developed this inductive approach. So basically, again, the idea is about doing research on a shared experience and collecting as much rich data as possible, but working in this iterative way between collecting and analyzing data. A key feature of grounded theory is this notion of a specific approach to coding. So moving from open coding, looking very carefully and minutely at the data that we have, through axial coding, looking for relationships, the way in which things are connected to one another, to theoretical coding. How is it that we can use these concepts that we're building through this coding process in order to develop a theoretical explanation or understanding of the experience being studied? So memoing, this writing process, is also key. So as this iterative process of collecting and analyzing data is going on, the researcher's also writing about it, and those are referred to as memos. And the idea is that we collect and analyze data when we do grounded theory until we reach this point of what's called saturation, where we feel that the data does not reveal anything new, that we've challenged ourselves to look for alternative explanations and collected data to allow us to investigate those. And so we look for saturation in order to feel confident that we have a reasonably robust theory. So when people do grounded theory, there's really no necessary prescribed methods, but oftentimes interviews are the most common data collection method that is used. So the coding process, as I said, is really key to doing grounded theory. So we start by labeling and naming our data with codes, which are typically quite small units, but we move to this other kind of coding, axial coding, where we begin to look for relationships. We begin to develop bigger units of meaning, categories, and moving on to conceptual understandings. And sampling, again, is what gives us the confidence that the data that we have is sufficient and robust in order to be able to develop a theory that is a good explanation or understanding of the phenomenon that we're studying. So as grounded theorists talk about this, they work inductively. More contemporary grounded theorists talk about working abductively. And you can see the distinctions here. So inductive reasoning means moving from specific data to a general conclusion that we believe generally to be true. Abductive reasoning, on the other hand, knows that we never have all of the data, we never can have all of the instances, but we can feel more or less confident, and we can, as a consequence, develop good descriptions, good predictions, as indicated in this little chart. So turning back to Glaser and Strauss's original study that grounded theory was developed from, their study of dying, gives you a little bit of a sense of what the outcome of doing grounded theory might be. So we're looking for a theory, oftentimes a small, what sociologists might call a middle range theory, but it is a coherent explanation of an experience, in this case, the awareness of dying. So I've just indicated a small bit here. There's, of course, much more to be said about it, and they do so in their book. But the theory in Glaser and Strauss's original study, was one that asked the question about how patient care is affected by the awareness of the level of dying by nurses, physicians, and the patients themselves. And as a consequence of doing this study, they identify 4 distinctly different dying awareness contexts and a typology of death awareness. So while this is just a small bit, it gives you a sense of what it means to develop an understanding or an explanation of an experience, in this case, awareness of dying. If you're interested in learning more about grounded theory, these are 3 possible places to start. If you're interested historically, the Glaser and Strauss book, The Discovery of Grounded Theory, is a must read. And if you want to feel confident that you understand grounded theory, this is probably a necessary book to read. It nonetheless has been superseded by many other works that are much more likely to help you in terms of understanding what to do. So Corbin and Strauss's book, which is in its 4th edition, I think, The Basics of Qualitative Research, is a very good place to start. And then Constructing Grounded Theory by Kathy Charmez really focuses on a constructivist approach when we think about doing grounded theory. All of them good places to begin, and they would lead you out to other resources. You will see in the literature that while people use grounded theory as a methodology, there is a heavy borrowing of the analysis strategies from grounded theory, even when we're using other methodologies.